find anything online. Now you can just YouTube something and it'll teach you how to make it, which is great. And then just do your research, do your market research. What are people eating? And chicken and noodles normally. You can't go wrong. But if you want to try something else, really do your research. Make sure there's a market there for it, and give it a go. Give it a go. Do your homework. Find a niche in the market if you think, and just give it a go.
Okay, we're here now with Tom Ranson, from the owner of Tequila Sunrise, which is a Mexican restaurant that's located at the Bit. Now we're going to talk about basic branding and his perspective as a chef and entrepreneur on branding, marketing, and not to mention personal branding itself. So hi, Tom, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, glad to have you here. And it's really cool that, after knowing, I visited Tequila Sunrise the other day, and I have to say, nachos was good, the sauce was good, it was pure, like Mexican dish, I would say, the sauce itself. The guac,
Good.
I think that's hard to make nowadays with the specific...
Yeah, avocados are hard to get here.
Correct.
Mm.
But what makes me interested is that what is your background story in creating or like building a restaurant, Mexican restaurant, Tequila Sunrise itself?
I think the story of how we got to this stage. I'm trained as a chef in the UK. I've travelled a lot with working for different hotels, cruise ships. I spent a year in Mexico about 6 years ago, and fell in love with the place, fell in love with the food. And once I returned here, I've been here for a couple of years now, living in Jakarta with my partner. We really couldn't find anything that was authentic Mexican food, so we thought, well, let's open our own place. So that was really the step forward for that. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So you worked in UK, you mentioned, right? You worked in Mexico.
I trained in the UK. So this was back in '95, and then I sort of travelled around once I was qualified, working in different hotels, sort of all over Europe, really. Spent a bit of time in Asia, in the Middle East. I lived in Israel for a while. I was in Cyprus. I've worked in Spain, in Africa. So yeah, that's sort of really my background with food.
So basically, you've kind of like gone globally in a way, right? Because you've tried Australian, UK, Mexican, New Zealand, and all kinds of culinary dish. How is it from, your experience from trying all that shaped your, personality and your, way of cooking stuff, or like shape your cooking style and identity?
Yeah, good question. I think food for me has been about travel. So I've sort of really planned my journey through the world based around what sort of foods I'd like to try and learn to cook as well. So a lot of my time I'd work for say 3-6 months somewhere, and then I'd take a couple of months off and travel extensively. And I like to go, and I used to do a lot of couch surfing. There's a couple of formats called Workaway or HelpX, and I'd actually go into these families' homes and experience the real food of those cultures. So rather than working for hotels and so forth, I like to get really hands-on and into the real food, the home cooking, which is really where you learn most about a culture and its food.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, you kind of like, I would say you try to master every recipe and understand its background story, a home dish and everything.
Yeah, so like food has the concept of food normally has, the sweet, the sour, the salt, the savoury. It's all pretty much the same wherever you go in the world, where the Thais will they'll use the fish sauce and the sugar and the lime juice. And other cultures, they'll use the same thing but in a different format, and food is very connected together. Like noodles, for example, the Italians have noodles. You have a noodle. Most cultures on earth have some sort of noodle. So there's parallels with all sorts of food. So for me, my travel has been based around food and culture. That's where I get
Since
my
day
most
one.
Yeah, from day one.
From day
That's
one.
why I became a chef.
Right.
Because it's so easy to travel. Everyone needs a chef. Everyone loves a chef, and everyone wants to be taught, a dish. So I've pretty much based my journey in life once I became qualified that I wanted to travel, but I also wanted to learn about foods and culture. Yeah.
Since when you started to have this passion for cooking?
Very early on. So I didn't like to do the dishes at home, wash the dishes.
Who does?
So I grew up with a family of three boys, and I was the middle one. So I'd help my mum cook, and my two brothers would help do the dishes and clean up, and it was the best way out of it. So, and then my parents had a delicatessen. So I grew up around food from an early age of about 7 years old, and we owned one of the first delicatessens in New Zealand. Really, we used to import sweets and salamis and pates, and so I grew up around food. I suppose that's where it really started. Um, yeah, that's pretty much been it. And then, yeah, who wouldn't fall in love with food? You know,
That's
it's
true.
it's a really good way to meet people, and people seem at their most comfortable when they're eating. So I found that, and it's the best way to enter into a person's home and really get to know the cultures around their food and their history of food.
So
Yeah,
basically, food is life, right? They say food is
food is
life.
life for
It is
sure. Food is love. Food can make you cry.
can mean you what else?
Lots of things food can. You know, it's a crazy subject.
All right. So
Yeah.
can you share some of your experience or moments from, your culinary journey, that have contributed to your unique kind of like identity as a chef,
Unique.
or like the most
I mean,
memorable
yeah. I
experience?
mean, I've got so many. I think what food has allowed me to do is to enter into the world of different people on a level. So, and whether that's working, I was lucky enough when I was working in the UK to work for some quite famous people. I won't mention any names, but I've worked for celebrities and some famous musicians, cooking privately for them, doing functions and so forth. Um, I mean, I've had so many experiences. I think the other side of cooking is that it gets you, when you're a chef and you're of any caliber, it gets you into a places where you may not be accessible by yourself. You know, working in high-end resorts that cost thousands, $2,000, $3,000 a night, which I couldn't afford to go to then, and being able to have that same experience. You know, being on an island in the middle of nowhere on a beautiful super yacht traveling in the Caribbean, working in a gold mine in Australia, you know, in the middle of the desert, and it's 45 degrees outside, and there's snakes and scorpions everywhere, you know. But it's all about that experience. So food and experiences go really hand in hand, and I really use that, the fact that I can cook and I have this knowledge, this world knowledge of food, which makes it easy for me to find work, you know. And it's taken me to the four corners of the planet, you know, which has been great
So
journey.
it has been how many years since that started until this day?
Well, I became a qualified chef in 1998. Before that, went to university and studied literature. And then since then, yeah, I've been constantly working, you know. So what's that, 98, 30,
98, it
yeah,
means
20,
29, 25,
25
25
years. 25
years,
years professionally,
27.
but I was always dabbling in food then
Okay.
before that. So, yeah, 25 years professionally. And then here I am in Jakarta. Crazy
Nice.
life.
So
Crazy.
crazy. Like you literally don't know where life takes you, where food takes you in this case, right?
Yeah, I think yeah, I've been a bit of a gypsy in my life,
Yeah.
really haven't. And I finally found a place I'd like to call home, my partner here. So I really want to now move forward and explore different avenues with food. Mexican isn't just my only, I'm classically trained French, but because I've worked in different countries around the world, I have a really good back knowledge.
Okay.
So that's our next stage, opening a central kitchen where we can start develop menus and work with other people in the communities and build relationships and possibly new restaurants, looking for investors and so forth. So.
Okay, that's cool. So you basically started as a chef. Now, every chef that I know that they would have their own signature dish or,
Right.
signature identity in a way.
Right.
Now we're talking about, you mentioned about your restaurant, your branding, your brand as well.
Hmm.
Now, what would you say is your kind of like signature
Signature dish.
element, personally?
Yeah. You never ask a chef that question.
Really?
It's like saying to a musician, "What's your favorite song?"
Ah,
Do you know what I
okay.
mean? So
Yeah.
it's really hard to. I mean, yeah. I'm always excited because food evolves. It's never standing still, you know. So from what I used to do in the '90s, where everything was round and circular, you know, and then they went through this stage where they're having sand and
Rocks.
rocks and everything smoke. Uh, and through what Heston Blumenfeld does with the fat duck and braid, where it's molecular, so he's deconstructing food and then reconstructing it in such a way which is really causing the palate to think. He's testing these boundaries with food. So food constantly evolving. Favorite dish? I'm happy with a beautiful piece of steak with some chips and a nice sauce. But I'd also, and go to some of the. I love street food. You know, I probably in my travels probably street food is my go-to place because you're eating with locals. It's affordable. And it's really local food. Yeah, you get to explore the local food. But I'm also happy to sit in a Michelin star restaurant, not very often because they're expensive, and see what these new chefs are developing and where they're taking food, to the next level. It's
So food is very changing. It's like constantly
constantly
changing.
evolving, and,
Right.
and it's subjective as well. So what you might think is a good meal, maybe not what I think. It's like art. They all fit together. Actually, music's the same. We're artists apparently. Most of us call ourselves struggling rock stars. Really, we would have liked to be rock stars, but we're not. But there's rock stars in the cooking world now. These guys, Anthony Bourdain, who passed away a couple of years ago, one of my favourite chefs, and where he took food and the travel and understanding the relationship between religions, cultures, and food uh, was fantastic. To me, he was the number one guy, and I was pretty gutted when he went. But other people take, there's different journeys. You've got the
Jamie
Jamie Olivers
Oliver,
of the world. You've got the what's his name?
Gordon
The
Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay, the angry guy. He's actually all right. I've met Gordon Ramsay a couple of times. He's a nice guy, but he's taken food a different way as well. It's more theatre.
I
But yeah,
see.
food evolves, and it will always evolve. Always.
Would you say it's completely not as in a different in a good way? Would you say it evolves in a good way, or it has like, oh, it has completely lost its original flavors?
It's look. Some people are going one way, some people are going the other. I think with the advent of AI and I can see restaurants eventually being purely controlled, run by machines, where it's going to be made by machines. The woks are going to be all automated. You'll go in there, you'll buy your food. You probably won't see a chef in the place. But then there's other people that will go the other route who are looking at sustainability, doing this farm to table type, which is really something I'm interested in long term, which is really where I want to be in Indonesia eventually, is to have somewhere which we can grow our own vegetables. We don't have to rely on ordering food from anywhere. Use local produce, seasonal produce, and really champion that, and also train locals. So my end game eventually, and this is my 5 to 10 year plan, is to um, create some type of eco lodge where we can have a sustainable restaurant using local produce and train and teach local guys to become chefs, and then they can go out and see the world.
Okay.
Just sort of the end game.
Is that what your plan is right now for your current restaurant, Tequila?
For the current restaurant, we're just testing the market because we saw a gap in the market, and we plan to open a few of these. We'll see how that goes, but we're going very well at the moment. But I think my end game, really, my heart is in sustainability and training local people. Yeah, I was lucky enough when I first started cooking, and this is before I became qualified, that a couple of cooks or chefs, I was just washing dishes. They sort of took me under their wing, and they taught me a lot about food, and I'm still in touch with them today. these guys are in their 70s now, 70s and 80s. But they taught me a lot. They taught me how to understand food, and that it's a career. Actually, you can really travel with it, and you can create some good. And yeah, it's a great career. It's not for everyone. It's tough. It's hard work. You know, it's a young man's game, really, but very rewarding. And just to see people smile on their face when you're putting something in their mouth. You're cooking something that they're putting them. They have to trust you. So when you see that, their face light up, they look at the food, it looks great, tastes good, they come up to you and compliment you after. There's nothing better for me.
All right, that's good. And how long has it been for Tequila Sunrise to,
We've only been open 6 months, and yeah, our sort of 2-year plan is to open a couple more, doing express outlets and possibly maybe a bigger themed restaurant in the Pick area eventually. But we're just playing around with that idea at the moment. So.
That's cool.
Yep,
That's cool.
yep.
So there's a possibility that after maybe Mexican restaurant, there's other possibility of other,
I've got so many ideas.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, too many ideas maybe. But yeah, we're in the process of learning. I'm fairly new to Jakarta, so some of the issues for us has been able to find the right suppliers, the right quality of products. Staffing can be an issue here, retaining staff. And location, location's very important here. So it's finding the right location. And there's so much competition here, People will try something once, but maybe they won't come back. So you really have to focus on service, quality of food. Location's very important. Price point. So all of those things factor in. And then you want to build this relationship with your customers. And so we're constantly reinventing. We have different things on every week, different specials. We have live music. Trying to get a community thing happening there in Tibet anyway.
Hey, that's cool. That's good. So would you say that's your personally brand where that's how you kind of like let out your ambience, you as a brand, as a chef for your, for your customers? You know what I mean? So basically, my question is, how do you actually express your culinary identity to your restaurants, to the customers?
Yeah, so that's a number of things, I think. It's not just one thing. I mean, yes, you can be the personality head chef guy, which maybe I'm a personality in myself, but I'm not. That's not really who I am, really. But I'm trying to make an identity with, like I said, there's a number of factors that make restaurants work and people return. You have to have good quality food. You have to have good service. Music can be an amazing factor. Location is very important. And price point. So all of those things definitely add up, and people want to return. For me, it's about having the experience. So people come back, they talk about it. I'll go on Instagram and here we are. Look at this, great food, great service, blah 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 blah. And you'll get repeat customers if you follow those rules. Yeah. But yeah, it's a hard industry for anybody, But we're doing well and we persevere. And
that's good.
Onwards and upwards. Yeah.
All right, that's good. So as a chef and entrepreneur, you've become a public figure yourself on Instagram as well.
I wouldn't say that.
You have over 20K followers? Over
50.
Bragging.
All paid for.
Okay. Based on your Instagram, so how do you manage and maintain your personal brand in the public eye, or what do you aim to achieve digitally?
How do I manage that? Well, I've got a great partner, and she manages that for me. At the moment, actually, we're lacking in that because we've been multi-focused on the new business. But for me, I think eventually my own brand will be about the sustainability and this. I'd like to eventually go around and visit the whole of Indonesia and experience all the different culture and food you have here, so I can really understand more about the food, because I've been to Bali, Jakarta, Gili Islands, Lombok. That's about it. Bandung, Bogor. That's it, I think. But you've got whatever 3,000 islands here, all different cultural identities, all different foods. So I'd really like to learn about those more, and then just develop this this diversity with the food, and then with my own influence, my own background, and then get into this training and teaching and putting something back to the younger generation. Teach them how to cook so they can go and travel and experience other cultures like I did.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
But you know, like these days, right? I mean, this era, the generations, they want something simple, right? I mean, I think it's different from back in the days where everyone's like, oh, you know what? Let's give everything all out. But now it's just like, oh, let's just cook something simple. I think. Do you have any difficulties in that? You know, especially one the other
I mean,
generations too.
yeah, but what's simple? What you think simple might you know, the average boule guy coming over and try to whip up a something Asian, it's like, oh,
Okay, makes sense.
it can be different. So I think no, I think the world's changed. I think the world will change now. Uh, and I think people will want to travel more, and they are traveling now. People are realizing that they don't have to necessarily go into an office anymore and sit there and do their work. People are working online. They're creating their own businesses online, a little bit like yourself. And so you don't have to be stuck in one country. And I think with that, people are learning more about foods. They're becoming more adventurous with food. And, I see now the young ones that come in, that come to our restaurant, and even guys I've worked with in the last 10 years in Australia and New Zealand, they're actually pretty well travelled, They're not even 25 and they've been to maybe 10, 15 countries already. Well, that was unusual. I'd only been to one country till I was 25. So these guys have travelled all around Asia. They might have been through Europe already, and they're able to do that with working online. So I think the food thing, as far as simplicity goes, I think that's changing because people are learning, oh, what's that? What's in that? Or they'll go to a cooking class in Bali and learn, 3 or 4 dishes because
Right.
they want to take that with them. They want to be able to replicate that when they get home to the UK or to the States or wherever they live. So
Okay,
I
that's
think
cool.
I think that'll change.
Right.
And then you can find anything online now. You can just YouTube something and it'll teach you how to make it. Which is great. Back in my day, you had to go to the library and find a book, buy it, and.
Cooking recipe, is
Oh, it
it?
was
Like,
terrible.
oh my good, old
Now
fashioned
you
way.
can Google anything and find 25 recipes for one dish, and then YouTube will show you how to make it. So the world's changing. Um, we've got a friend here that has got a bakery, and he's learnt how to bake through YouTube, and he's a great baker, and he's doing
Oh,
well. So
very nice, very
yeah,
nice. How about you for Mexican restaurant for tequila centers? So, what's the recipe like? As in, like, did you completely, I mean, create it from scratch, from the old
no,
ways,
we
from
sort of
books?
we focused on what the Indonesian palate likes, and you guys like your heat. You like spicy foods, but it has to taste good as well. Yeah, so we've sort of changed our recipes a little bit to suit the Indonesian palate. So I wouldn't say they're really traditional Mexican food, and it's a bit of a mashup really, a little bit of Tex-Mex, a little bit of traditional, and then a little bit of sort of Indonesian influences. We make all our own sauces. What we do, Pride, is we make pretty much everything in house from
Okay.
scratch. So that's our yeah, and just fresh, clean flavors really.
How long it took for you to experiment it yourself with the sauces and very sure,
I've had these recipes for years,
okay.
so I've got a whole
Ideas.
in my head so many ideas. So waiting to get out. So yeah, Mexican food is actually quite easy to replicate here because most of the ingredients are available, readily available. So your chilies, your cumin, your coriander, your limes and lemons, they're all here, and you guys are used to those flavors anyway.
True.
There's only a couple of things we buy that are imported that we have to try and get this original sort of authentic Mexican flavors, but pretty easy to replicate. It's been one of the reasons we did it. Yeah.
Okay. Would you say that's a reason when you mentioned gap in the market,
Mm,
is that the reason why, as in like, oh, because Indonesian has the same, texture onto spices,
yeah.
so and there's not many, or what are your thoughts?
I think it's one of those foods where it's more easily acceptable. Like people, I think the Indonesian palate, they'll recognize, oh, this is very similar. I know what this is. Slightly different, but it's still, there's the roti, you have the bread, and you have the chili. And so it's just most of the battle is how do I eat this thing?
Yeah.
Quesadillas are nearly on every menu. I walk into a restaurant, there's a quesadilla there. So they're coming through. I mean, it was only maybe 10 years ago, you wouldn't even have sushi here, I'd imagine. What's sushi? I remember when sushi came on the market in New Zealand, and my dad was like, this is back in the early 90s. Who's going to eat raw fish? But now it's changing, So I think Mexican food is here to stay. It's just creating a good product that we can move forward and say, look, this is what Mexican food should taste like. It's healthy, it's fresh. Yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah.
cool. So basically, I mean, excited for, Tequila Sunrise to actually expand.
Hmm.
So it's just not one place, so everyone can taste it.
Yep.
But back to your branding as well, as a chef and entrepreneur for restaurants, is that what are key lessons or insights, especially that now you've been to Indonesia and you've have your own restaurants here, you know the market well.
Hmm.
So what are your key insights, that you've gained or that you've allowed to successfully transition into entrepreneurship from chef to entrepreneurs, especially in Indonesia itself?
So do your homework, first of all. I would suggest I wouldn't aim for food or a type of food or restaurant theme that involves too many imported goods, because logistically that's very hard to find and costly.
Mm.
So if I was to do something else, or I would suggest to someone starting off in the world, keep it simple. Find a food type or dishes that you can create easily here without spending,
Too much.
and using imported foods. The biggest battle we've had here is finding the suppliers. So in my country, I'm used to having maybe 2 or 3 suppliers that will supply everything. So you have one guy that does all the vegetables, one does all the meat, and the other guy does all the ambient stuff. Yeah. So this is all your canned goods, your rice, your flour. It's very easy. You get a book like this, you ring up that day, the food's there the next. Here, the logistics of it, bit different. So staffing is an issue, trying to find and retain good staff. We're lucky now, we've got some really good people on board, and we're starting to figure out how to find the good ones and retain them. So there's ways to do that. I won't get into that now, but yeah, finding good staff. So, and when you hire staff, take on more than you think you're going to need, because I can guarantee you within a week, 2 or 3 of them are going to leave anyway.
Oh
It's
gosh.
just it's the same everywhere in the world. Hospitality is a really transient job. There's not many countries in the world that, apart from chefs, that waiters or waitresses treat it as a profession. Yeah, you go to France, for example, it's professional waiters. That's their job. America is a bit similar, but they rely on the tip system. Yeah, here there's no tips. Well, I like my staff to get tips, which is great, but it's not really part of the
System,
system. Yeah.
right.
So yeah, those 3 things: finding the right suppliers, location is key. Be careful on how much you pay for rent, because that can be expensive depending on where you are. Where we are, it's not too bad, but yeah, that's really relative to what you're going to earn. And remember that you're not going to make as much money here as you did, say, in Australia or the States, because the spend per head is less, depending on what type of restaurant you do. If you're going to do a very fancy restaurant, French food or Italian or something nouveau cuisine, then maybe you'll be earning some good money. But the average spend per head is not too high. So be very careful. Keep your margins very low. Um, that's pretty much it. Staffing, trying to find the right food, and then just do your research. Do your market research. What are people eating? And chicken and noodles normally. You can't go wrong. But if you want to try something else, really do your research. Make sure there's a market there for it, and give it a go.
How long did it take for you to do the research though?
We were researching for nearly a year. We actually started with another online idea, which sort of didn't work. But again, that's because I think I went for all these expensive ingredients. I don't think the location and the price point was correct either. So it was purely online. So we learnt from that. I wouldn't call it a fail, because we learnt from it. And don't be afraid to fail in this business. But don't go and put all your eggs in one basket. Test the market. Do a pop-up store. Go and find these where they do these events, yeah, and start small. Get a little small thing there. Start with one thing, one or 2 things. Just test the market. Don't shell out all the money. Once you can see there's a market for it, then look for the location, and then branding's really important. Social media is massively important. We have a great social media, a girl that does our work, and we work with her. It's really important to work on that and post things daily, keep people up to date. today people are just sitting on their phones all day. Yeah, so it's you've got to keep up to date with the social media. It's really important.
All right,
It's key.
Tom. Basically, that's the questions from us. Well, thank you for sharing on Tequila
That's a pleasure.
Sunrise and your experience as well, which is quite exciting. Now, do you have any last message for the viewers out there, maybe about Tequila Sunrise, or what is your go-to motivation on day-to-day to be who you are right now?
Go-to motivation.
Oh, that's deep.
Look, just give it a go. Do your homework. Find a niche in the market if you think, and just give it a go because what have you got to lose? And if you've got good people behind you, a good partner, um, you know, look, even if you fail, you haven't failed. You'll learn something from that and just keep moving forward. Like I said, we failed the first time, not failed, but we learned a lot, and we're on the next step now, and so onwards and upwards. But Jakarta's an exciting city. It's full of the whole place is full of entrepreneurs. I can walk into a cafe and there's all these young people sitting on their computers thinking, yeah, what do we do next? How can we make money? What can we do there? And you don't see that in many. You're beginning to see it more now, but it's quite exciting. I think and Indonesia is a powerhouse moving forward in this part of Asia, and yeah, it's exciting. So go and do it, and good luck.
Awesome. Now, can you tell one last message to viewers to maybe follow Papertoater Indonesia and follow and watch your
To follow what?
to follow Papertoater Indonesia
Oh yes.
and also to watch our YouTube to watch your experience on the YouTube.
What do you want me to say?
Follow Papertoaster
Follow
Indonesia.
paper. What's it called? Sorry.
Papertoaster.
Sorry. Follow paper toaster.
Indonesian have difficulties in mentioning paper toaster, but apparently, like foreigners that have difficulties in mentioning Indonesia itself.
Paper toaster Indonesia. The bomb.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
good luck with what you're going to do here. It's exciting. So, and I hope we can keep in touch. And
for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Paper toaster. Here first.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Basically, thank you.
Thanks
I hope that was
That was easy. Seamless.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Good. Thank God.
So, need some beer next time we go.
Oh, would love to have
Glass
that.
of wine.
Okay. For sure.